Welcome to the Norman Hyde YouTube channel. We're here today at DMP Performance Motorcycles, who've kindly lent us their facilities whilst our own are being knocked about by builders. Today I will be ably assisted by Alan Dowds, whom a lot of you will know from his from his Superbike days and various other British publications that he features in regularly. So what are we going to do today? We have a standard Triumph T100 2016 vintage, and what we're going to do is we're going to replace the silencers with Norman Hyde HBS 705 Classics, and we're going to remove the catalytic converter. Why we're going to remove the catalytic converter? On these motorcycles, if you simply change the silencers, and Triumph have a large parts option where you can fit the Vance and Hines silencers, for instance, I'm afraid after your £500 spent, it will sound pretty much exactly the same as before you spent your £500. The main reason being the catalytic converter absorbs not only power but also quite a lot of the sound. So we're going to remove that, fit the silencers, and we're going to see what it sounds like. Okay, so we've got the bike on the bench. Obviously the first things we're going to do is to remove the silencers and remove the standard headers so we can get at the catalytic converter which lives underneath the bike. We'll show you what that looks like when we take it off, but what we're going to replace it with is the decat pipe or X pipe or crossover pipe. In the case of the Norman Hyde Toga version, this is made from stainless steel. It's been bead blasted, which gives it that dull look, fitted with the clamps, and this simply replaces the catalytic converter, allowing for the gas to flow in there, round there and out there, whereas at the moment it's going through a catalytic converter. So significantly lighter. Again, we'll put the stats up at the end of the video, weight saving and power gain, but that's what we're going to fit. So first of all, we're going to remove the silencers. There's a mounting point there by the rear footrest, there's a mounting point underneath here, and obviously the clamp on the silencer, and then we're going to repeat that on the other side. When we come to remove the mounting point here by the rear footrest, to do this really properly you would need to remove the rear footrest assembly on its own. Actually you can do it without doing that. And because this bike is fitted with the pannier carriers, it makes it a lot easier to do that. So we're simply going to undo that from the other side and leave the footrest assembly attached. So on the left hand silencer there's an additional mounting point to the frame here, so we're just going to take that off. That's nice and loose now. That just comes through there. And now we're going to remove the rear footrest. Okay, so the clamp's loose, that bottom bracket's had the bolt removed, we've got the nut off the back of there, just move that out of the way. Take this out, give that a little clockwise turn, and it's off. What we need to do also at this point is be very aware of how this bush is put back together, because it has to go back in exactly the same way, otherwise we'll have far too much movement on the Norman Hyde silencer. So what's holding this on now is it's clamped to the rear of the catalytic converter, it's clamped to the front of the catalytic converter, and where it's attached to the cylinder head, not forgetting the wire to the lambda sensor, which feeds back to the ECU. So the first thing we're going to do is loosen the attachments to the catalytic converter, and you can see now while we're doing this on the bench and not doing it on a side stander at the side of the road, because there's not a great deal of room under there to get down on your hands and knees and do it, but that's what we're going to do from here. These are quite fiddly, there's not a lot to see, they're right underneath the bike. A good tip here is to use a ratchet spanner. 10mm ratchet spanner, front and rear, will save you a lot of work. Okay, we'll just drop these dome bolts off by hand, now they're loose. That's the bottom one. That's the top one. And then as I take this off, it's a little bit of a Chinese puddle, it's a split clamp. Okay, as we take that off, that's what I was talking earlier about, it's split, the clamp splits, but it does only go back the one way. It won't go like that. It does, one goes behind the other and vice versa on the other side. Okay, we're going to remove this wire here, which is the lambda sensor. We need to be careful with this, it's quite fragile. And there's two ways of doing it. You could either disconnect it from the loom first, but we've done a few of these and it's quite easy just to do this and be careful with it and leave it attached to the loom. It's one less job to do. 17mm open end spanner. Must look a bit amateur, isn't it? Now that is actually what the lambda sensor looks like. Just need to be careful that, put it out of the way for now, don't damage it. Alright, everything's now loose, all we've got to do is pull it off with a bit of gentle persuasion. There's a gasket there that we can reuse, so just watch if that drops out. So a little bit of firm persuasion, perhaps pull that out of the head slightly first. These are undone, they'll come away, the clamps stay on the pipe. Okay, so what we've done now is basically exactly the same on the other side. We've removed the silencer, we've removed the downpipe, and now we can see the catalytic converter. However, we can't get it out because the frame tube is in the way. So how we're going to do that is, on the left hand side, we're going to loosen this left hand frame down tube, which has a fitting at the top here, here onto the front of the engine, and at the back here. Not a difficult job, access is the problem, so we're going to have to remove the back fitting of the fuel tank, move it back out of the way. We're going to have to loosen the radiator and then make some space so we can remove the catalytic converter from underneath. So to gain access to this top fixing for this left hand frame spar, we've taken this little spindle out, slid the petrol tank back to gain access, and then we're going to loosen this one. Okay, there's a very difficult access here, but there's a nut at the back which you have to get access to with a spanner, which we've done and loosened it. Once you've got that loosened, you can undo this, taking care not to drop the nut down the back of the radiator. There we go. There's the nut there. And hopefully now just slide the bolt out. That's out there. It's also useful just to loosen the top fixing from the radiator to give some movement on there. And it's only on two rubber fixings at the bottom and held on at the top. So if needed to be, we can move it out of the way a little bit without doing any further harm. Okay, we've got to remove this one now. Worth pointing out, this uses a Torx head, which you need a specialist Torx tool to do. It's a T55 size. Make sure before you start the job you've got one of those, otherwise you're going to have a partially disassembled bike that you can do no more, because you will not get it out with one of these. 17mm on the back, very straightforward if you've got the right gear. Now obviously these are tightened to the correct factory torque settings, and before we come to put them back in, we'll let you know at the end of the video what the correct torque settings are so you can make sure they're torqued up correctly. That's nice and loose now. Just remove that. There we go. Okay, the last two we need to undo are these two at the back. We don't need to worry about putting a spanner on the other side because it's a captive nut. You just need your Allen key in there. We'll whiz those out. One. there's the captive double nut at the back. Now you can see the rail's nice and loose, and there's all the movement you need to get the catalytic converter out. Okay, we've got the silencers off both sides, we've got the headers off both sides, we've got this frame tube nice and loose and out of the way. Last thing to do to get the catalytic converter off is just 2 bolts, one at the front, one at the side there, and it's off. I loosened the front one from the other side to save me going out of camera shot, so I can just take that off finger tight now. This chap here is held in through a rubber bush, but the rubber bush will stay in place. Behold the catalytic converter. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got the decat pipe, or catalyst replacement cross pipe, whatever you want to call it, and we've got the catalytic converter. What we're going to do first of all, there's a rubber bush there, there's a rubber bush there, and there's this shield here. We're just going to swap them over onto this. The fittings are identical. Bit of boring stuff to watch on video, so I'm just going to do that, and then I'm going to show you how to refit it in exactly the same way as we removed the other one. Okay, so we've stripped the little dash plate off there, we've stripped the rubber bushes off, and that's pretty much done with now, unless you live in California or somewhere, and you will probably need that again sometime. But for the purpose that we're doing today, that is now scrap. We can refit this. We've refitted the rubber bush in there, we've got the rubber bush in there, there are 2 bolts, so I'm going to pop this back in and bolt it up. Okay, so we've got that in position. We can put that bolt there through the front. We're going straight into a welded nut on the other side, so there's no spanner required for once. Nicely done. Same again on here. Nice welded nut on the other side. Just remains for us to tighten those up fully, and that's the decat pipe in place. Okay, that's the catalytic converter actually fitted. All that remains now is that we refit this frame rail, refit the headers, ensure that the petrol tank's back in position, ensure that the radiator's in position, just to reverse what we did, and then we're going to show you how to fit the Norman Hyde silencers. Okay, so we've got the headers back on, we've made sure the tank's bolted back on correctly, the lambda sensors are correctly tightened and torqued, all the fittings are tightened and torqued, the decat pipe's installed, the silencer on the other side is done. Replacing the silencers is pretty much an obvious job, you're just doing it in reverse of removing the other silencers. So we'll just finish off here, and then we'll get her off the bench and see what she sounds like. Far more pleasing sound, I think we all agree.